So we start the recording and I'll take up the summaries one by one. Okay. So in this part of the book, the first chapter is indeterminates, cosmic determinations and the indeterminable. Okay. So basically what she said, there is something which is absolutely featureless at the highest level, and there is something which is full of features at the lower level. This we can also say in another way. We can say that at the highest level, it is so subtle and one. These 4 or 5 things, if you remember, then everything becomes very clear. I'll repeat those 4 or 5 principles. At the highest level, only oneness. There is no multiplicity there at all. Only oneness, like the seed. But that seed is very limited, but this seed is infinite, eternal, and spread everywhere. And there is no difference anywhere, you will not see any difference anywhere. Number one, oneness, and in the physical world at the rock bottom, the many, the multiplicity. This is one thing one must remember. Second, the formless. Because the problem is, if there are forms, it can't be oneness. There will be different forms and there will be multiplicity. So it is formless. The oneness and the formless, and at the bottom, in the physical world, or even below the physical world, even the inconscient. Inconscient again becomes oneness. That's the interesting part. Okay? It's only in the physical world that there is the many. Then, the other thing is, that is eternal. It is outside time and space at the highest level. There is no time and no space. Because if there is time, there will be mutability. But this is immutable at the highest level. No change at all. It doesn't need to change because it is perfect in every way. There is no need of an evolution there at all. Okay, so it is absolutely perfect. Completely immutable and featureless also is an aspect of oneness. If there are features, how can it be one? It can't be. So, oneness, formlessness, featurelessness, immutability. These are the highest level. And good morning. Oh, I'm sorry, she can't join. She's not well. Okay, but the recording is there. So, this is the thing. Then, another thing also we can add to that, the subtlest. Because even there, subtlety also, if a grossness comes in, okay, there can be oneness. It is possible. Okay. But, so we have to add the subtlest at the highest level and the most gross at the lower level. Okay. So these 4 or 5 principles, if you remember, we will understand the chapter. Now, after that, then there is that which is, he has used the words indeterminate, indeterminables, and the indeterminable and the cosmic determinates. When you use the word indeterminate, that means you can't determine its character. You can't say what the features are. There are no features. If there are features, you can describe. So you can use the word determinate by saying it has got features. So indeterminate means no features, you can't describe. Indescribable. Okay? That's why featureless. So at the highest level, that is you can call it divine, you can call it God, whatever you want. Then somehow or other, he gets the impulsion to manifest himself in the physical world. Now, this is a matter which cannot be logically sustained. Why should the divine, who has everything, why should he at all manifest? Okay, so that is a problem which cannot be solved at the mental level. But as we have seen, there is a very low amount of knowledge and consciousness in the worm. There is a slightly better consciousness in the insects. There is even better, more in the cats and dogs. And finally in man also, there is more consciousness, but he doesn't have full consciousness. Even the Yogi has a better consciousness than he has. But even the yogi doesn't have full consciousness. Full consciousness can be there only at the highest level. So, the divine, when you go there, you understand the need of him to manifest. Then the other thing is, what does manifestation imply? The one thing which you can explain is, suppose I have a thought in my mind, but I don't express it. It remains unmanifested. Nobody will know, at least our level, we won't know what I'm thinking. Okay, it's in my mind. But the moment I speak it out and give it a form, when I'm speaking out, what am I doing? I am giving form with words to my thought, which is one in my mind, but now I am expressing it. And so manifestation is an expression. And when you are expressing something, you have to use limited words. So carry this image to the ultimate creation, and you will see that when you want to manifest, you have to give limited form to it. So, and limited form means features start coming in. If there are limited forms, features come in. So this chapter says at the highest level, totally one, and as it keeps coming down, it starts becoming the opposite of all those principles that we have spoken about now. The one starts becoming the many, the formless starts becoming form, the featureless starts putting on features. Okay, slowly, slowly, more and more features, more and more features. And this process of putting on features and forms, colors, shapes, size, weight, all these things, it goes on. It never ends anywhere. It's a constant, constant, constant creation, and it goes on ever. Okay, it's a permanent thing. The higher is permanent in static condition, and the lower is permanent in action. Okay, it's the opposite, but there's no end to the process. It is absolutely, it goes on and on. More and more plants are being created which did not exist earlier. More and more species are being created. More and more events are happening. More and more wars will happen. Everything is there. It is going on. So this is a chapter that is describing. And when you put on more features, it becomes more and more describable, if you want. And you are all, at least Archana is a doctor and Jasmine also is a doctor. So you know the process of how the one cell, whether it be in a plant or whether it be a living creature or in a human being, it starts with one cell becoming fertilized and then it starts multiplying. It self-divides itself. First that one cell, it becomes 2, then it becomes 4, then it becomes 8. It goes by geometric progression. And the more it is dividing itself, the more the characteristics are coming in. Okay. So now when the characteristics start coming in, you say stem cells. Okay. Now the one cell is going towards becoming a bone tissue, another is going towards a muscle tissue, another is going, it is not yet become muscle, but it is about to become that. So it is more or less is going, finally it ends up becoming bone tissue, finally it becomes nail tissue, finally it becomes cartilage tissue, finally it becomes light sensitive retina tissue. So infinitely it goes on multiplying, multiplying, multiplying until finally it becomes absolutely determinate. This is what he is describing in the chapter. Now what is interesting is that he uses the words determinate and indeterminate. At any level if you take, okay, let us take a level at, say, let us say take a level at level 4 or level 10, let us say. When I am looking at level 9, it seems to be less determinate than when it is at level 10. And when I go to level 11, it is even more determinate than when it is at number 10. So in other words, as it keeps coming down, more and more determinations, more and more describable features start coming into the picture. Until finally, at the lower level, there is a huge number of features in everything. In cats, in dogs, in human beings, everywhere. And of course, they have done the genome, they have done that, and they have seen that these characteristics are all completely the blueprint of all these things are in the RNA and the DNA. Okay, it is there. In fact, now they have discovered that you can even do genetic engineering. I don't know if it has become a practical thing yet, to a certain extent maybe. But if I want a child with blue eyes, I can go to a doctor who can change in the that itself. Okay, that particular thing he will change. So fantastic progress in science, but it's also got its own dangers. Yeah? So we shouldn't meddle too much with God's things, because God's knowledge is infinite, but our knowledge is very limited. We know something, but we might mess up. In fact, that's the whole problem with the whatever crops, na? The food that we are genetically engineering. There are problems which come up, and many people don't want these genetically modulated food crops. They don't want. But sometimes it does help. Okay? For instance, they have discovered rice and wheat, which is its growth period is reduced. So we get more food. Instead of taking 45, 50 days, it can be done in 30 days. I'm not very particular about the number of days, but it is shortened, and also it becomes more resistant to wind and rain and all. So there is some truth to that. After all, we are interfering with nature's processes when we are improving medicines also. No? So we are improving because that's a characteristic of mind, progress, change. That's what it says in the synthesis. So anyway, so this is what he is describing in the chapter. Now, is there something which is indeterminable? That means absolutely you can't describe? Yes, that indeterminable is the supreme divine. The moment you define him and say he is immortal, he is omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, you are giving three characteristics which are limiting him. So that is the indeterminable. In other knowledge, Allah is great, okay, Christ is love. They say all these things. They put it very proudly on the back of their car, the windshield, the back window, the rear window, they put all these things. You are limiting him. So why do you want to limit him? So he is indeterminable. But indeterminable by what? By your mind. Is there some stage where you can know him fully? Yes, that's a consciousness. When your consciousness goes, not the mental consciousness, but the spiritual consciousness, not even the spiritual consciousness. You have to go to the supramental consciousness, there you become one with him. When you identify yourself, now you know fully what it is. But it is not, it cannot be expressed in words. So that is what the indeterminable is. And as I told you, at the lower levels, if you take three levels, level 10, level 9 and level 1, okay, what is features in level 10 is more than what is there in level 9, which is above it and below it. Okay. Usually we describe that, let us say, we take molten metal. Okay. Now, molten metal is, let us say, level 9. Now, I can make that level 9 molten metal into metal sheets. It takes on more form. I can make it into wires, okay, which are more form, different form. Okay, I can make it into railway tracks. So that is again another form. So this is what is at level 10. But now, what about level 11? What can I do? Okay, I can make that wire very, very thin and use it for electric purposes. I can make that wire very thick, okay, and it can be used for building bridges. Okay, it is still thick. So it has put on more characteristics. So this whole chapter is exactly this. So when you are at level 10, all that is there at level 9 is indeterminate in that sense, relatively indeterminate. And what is below you is more determinate. Okay. So this is what he's saying in the whole chapter. Okay. Of course, there are many other things, but basically this is what he's saying in the chapter. Is that more or less clear, or Any questions are coming up? It's a big chapter, huh? 40 pages. I hope I made myself clear. I don't know.
Yes, Sangata, we got a gist of the chapter, like.
Yeah. Okay, should we go to the next one? The next chapter is also a very big chapter. Brahman, Purusha, Ishvara, Maya, Prakriti, Shakti. Now there is a feeling among even yogis that if you get out of your ignorance and you make your consciousness rise to the spiritual level of consciousness, everything will be known. Okay? And there is one where you identify yourself with the divine and fine. You have escaped the sufferings and the pains and the problems of life and you are free. So that has been until now largely, because even the Vedas don't limit themselves like that. So largely the idea has been mukti, liberation. Getting out from the prison house of body mind life is the one thing necessary. Okay? But it is not exactly like that. Even in the spiritual planes of consciousness, which we call level 2, okay, there are 4 grades. Na? We have seen that there is an element mind, there is a higher mind, then there is an illumined mind, and there is a intuitive mind, and there is the overmind. So, very briefly, what these descriptions are. The higher mind is compared to our normal consciousness, the mental consciousness is like a candlelit room. That's what Surendra says. It's like a candlelit room. You have to grope, you have to see, seek, and try and understand what is there. We have to do a trial and error method. This is also what science does all the time. It's a candlelit room. But when you go to the higher mind level, your consciousness rises and goes out of the mind, it becomes the light, becomes a broad daylight. You don't have to struggle anymore. Sriranga uses the word galley slave labor. Okay, there is no more. The mind doesn't have to labor anymore. There is no effort. Automatically, you see things and you understand. Okay, so this is the higher mind. Now, you can go even higher up. You get the illumined mind. When you go to the illumined mind, it is like not only daylight, but it's like a flash of lightning. It can go so fast. Okay, it is lighted up. Okay, but light has to be thrown on what you have to see. Okay, then when you go to the intuitive level, something interesting happens. You don't have to illuminate what you want to know by throwing light on it. The object itself, which you want to know, will emit its own light. And so in the lower level, you are throwing light on what you want to see, and then you can see it. But in the other one, the intuitive mind, the object itself which you want to know, it reveals itself to you. It is its own light. You don't have to throw light on it from outside. This is the characteristic of the intuitive mind. Then finally at the overmind level, it becomes a cosmic thing, and you are one with the cosmos, and it's combination of all these powers are there at the overmind level. But yet in the overmind level, there is still the difference between spirit and matter. There is also a difference between the God and the physical world. You see that there is a dichotomy. But this dichotomy also keeps on changing its character. This is what he is describing in this chapter, Brahman, Purusha, Ishvara, Maya, Prakriti, Shakti. So remember one thing, in this chapter, there is a difference between God and the world. That we have described all those things. God is infinite, out of time and space, one, okay, formless and subtle. But the world is exactly the opposite. So you see this dichotomy. Okay? And the origin of all this dichotomy is Shakti and Chit. Chit is consciousness, okay? And Shakti is the one that creates a motion and the events in the physical world. So this is in the physical world, Shakti is dominant. In the higher worlds, there is only consciousness, and that is static, and it's got knowledge and it sees. Okay? So this is what he's saying. Now he describes as the consciousness rises from the higher mind to the elemental mind to the intuitive mind to the overmind, your views of things starts changing. This he has explained also in the earlier one. At every level, the views and the thoughts and the laws that operate are valid for that level, but they are not valid for the next one or the one below. A very gross example is that an animal can easily, at the animal level, which is the sense level, it can jump on another animal and eat it up. It's fine. You don't think it to be cruelty. That's the laws that operate there. It's valid. But when you come to the mental world, which is slightly higher than the life value, okay, you can't do that. Values have changed. Another example which Sridhar gives about the change of values is the sunlight, the sun. The sun is rising, you see it very clearly rising, okay, it is mounting, and you come to the conclusion with your senses that the sun is going round, it is rising in the east and setting in the west. But when you come to the mental level, which Galileo had to face, you see that that is not the truth at all. Completely, the values change. It is not the sun that is moving at all, it is the earth that is moving. So, your values are changing again. So, this is what he's saying. So, when these in the spiritual planes of consciousness, when the values change, you have basically three combinations. One is the Brahman combination, the other is the Purusha combination, and the last is the Ishvara combination. Okay, so at the you can have these at all the levels. It's not that they are hermetically sealed to each other and compartmentalized, but there's a gradation. But in any case, you can have this. So, what is the Brahman consciousness? The self, the Atman, the Brahman. And what is its characteristics? It is featureless, it is one, it is absolutely subtle but absolutely real. There are no immutability and featurelessness, and sense of infinity and eternity. You also know the consciousness that is there realizes that it is eternal. Your immortality is established by the liberation from the body-mind life. Okay, so that is the Brahman consciousness. So when you are in the Brahman consciousness, how do you see the physical world? Because we just now said that both are always there, right up to the overmind level, both are there. So when you see that, you see that the physical world normally is absolutely an illusion. The forms that are there are not the reality at all. They are like the images on a cinema screen, or they are like photographs. And there also there is a gradation. Sometimes you say that it's a total illusion, it is mind created, there is no reality to it, or sometimes you can say it is half real, like the shadow, like the blue sky. There is no blue in the sky, but it is still half real, because at your sense level it is real to you. So this is what you can see. But when you are in the cosmic consciousness, you see that the physical forms also have a reality of their own. Okay, so in the Brahman consciousness, you see the physical world as illusion. You see that it is only dead forms. There is nothing there which is alive and which is meaningful. Everything seems to be only forms without any purpose. So when you are in the Brahman consciousness, you experience the world as Maya, illusion. Okay? But then as you rise in consciousness, you realize that this only the witness self. Okay? You are only watching. But now you realize that there is a Purusha. There is an entity. It's not that you are infinite and impersonal, but there is an entity. And that entity is your true personality. Okay? And the true personality, the true individuality, is not limited to any one thing. It is infinite. Okay? It is Atman. It is there everywhere. But when you realize it as an entity, you realize the physical, you realize yourself as Purusha. And this also can be there at all the levels. So when you are an entity, you are a Purusha. And how do you see the physical world? You see it as force. You see it as Prakriti. You see it as nature. It is not illusion anymore. It is real. But it is mechanical energy. Mechanical unconscious energy. So when you are in the Purusha consciousness, which is the second one we are discussing, it becomes, the physical world seems to you to be mechanical energy but real. Okay? Then, but you don't have any control over it. They seem to be totally different things. Nature is going on acting on its own force, unconsciously and mechanically. Okay? But there is a higher level. When you go to that Ishvara level, you see that you have the power to even change the lower. So power starts coming in fully at the Ishvara level. You become Lord, Master. You become the Purusha Uttama. In the Gita also these ideas are there, but there they describe level 1 as Kshara Purusha. Your soul is also evolving. Okay? The soul is divine in essence, but it is evolving. Nah? Because it starts as a completely sleeping. Only potential of the divinity is there in the soul. In the atom, even the divine presence is there, but it is not conscious of itself. It has covered itself up on purpose for the play and the adventure of existence. It has covered itself up. So there is an evolution even of the soul. This is the Purusha and Prakriti. But you see, as you rise in consciousness, that you have the power also to change your lower. And even at the spiritual level, this power starts becoming more and more obvious, and you can start using the power also. And you can use the power to change your own body mind life. You can use your power to even produce things in the physical world. Okay, this is what even the black magic people also do, because even at the level of the occultism, that means at the vital level also, powers are there, but very limited powers. And very often, because at the vital level you are ignorant, you use these powers for the wrong purpose. That's what is called black magic. Okay? But you can also use it for positive results. Okay? You can cure people. You can turn events to their natural course. You can do so many good things in the physical world. Okay? So that's what Sri Aurobindo was doing. Sitting in Pondicherry, okay, even in the overmind consciousness. In fact, people ask him questions. Sir, this power is coming from where? Is it supermind? He says, no, it's not the supermental power, but it's the overmind power. Okay? Or he specifies which power it is. For every work, you have to use the power which is appropriate to that work. So, at the highest level, you become totally Lord. You become master of existence. And you can control events, you can control things, you can control yourself, you can control others. Okay? And these powers are usually described as the Ashta Siddhis. Okay? They are very, very available in the second level, the spiritual planes of consciousness, they are available. Ashta Siddhis. Anima, Garima, Laghima, okay? All these, you can make yourself as light as you want, you can make yourself as heavy as you want, you can have influence on others, okay? Aishwaryam, Prakamyam, you can get whatever you want. All these powers are there in the spiritual planes of consciousness, but they become absolutely at the highest level. So these are the three planes that he's talking about. And when you go to the Ishvara consciousness, you are the Purusha who is eternal, infinite, and impersonal and personal at the same time. Then you see that the physical world is not mechanical energy, but it's your own energy, which is full of consciousness. Okay, you have delegated your power to work in the physical world and obey your own will and obey your own purpose in life. That's what you see when you are at the Ishvara level. That's a chapter, again a very big one, 45 pages. Okay. Then the other two are much simpler. Okay. The eternal and the individual. Again here, there is a tendency in our Indian system that go to God, don't go to the physical world. It's useless. It's full of darkness, full of features, full of suffering, full of this. But in this chapter, the eternal and the individual, the third chapter of this section, he establishes the fact that the eternal and the individual, the limited and the unlimited, both are divine. Don't say that one is inferior to the other. That's what the Mayavadins and the Buddhists say. But he says, we don't want to say that. God has purposely created the infinitesimal and He has also created the infinite. There are only two aspects, but this also is divine, that also is divine. In fact, he says that in so many ways. In his poems also he says, and he also says that in Life Divine also, he says the force that uh, creates the vast cosmos with all its whirling planets and tremendous cosmic forces is the same force that produces the anthill. So the quality does not change. Okay? That's really what he's saying. In his sonnet, Who, he says also, na? He says, the hand that sent Jupiter spinning through heaven spends all its cunning to fashion a curl on the head of a baby or a curl of hair. So this is what he's saying in this chapter. The eternal and the individual both have their validity and both are real. And you should be able to see, even in the limited, you should be able to see the infinite. And then we come back to that famous 4 lines of William Blake. Okay? To see a world in a wild flower. No, sorry. To see a world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wild flower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. Now, in India also we don't need to go to English poets, although he had the experience. William Blake was also a painter. Huh? He was not only a poet but also a painter. And in our Indian also we have the same idea. That which is infinite for us is finite for the divine. So that which is taking 10,000 million years for us is for him nothing but 1 second. So that is the idea is there in India also. It is there. There are many interesting jokes also about that. I think I told you once. It's a very interesting joke. Okay, when someone is told that for you what is long and what is big is nothing. It's just a very simple, insignificant thing for the divine. Okay. For you, 10,000 years is 1 second for the divine. For you, 1 million rupees is nothing but 1 naya paisa for the divine. So someone who hears that says, okay, very good. I will ask the divine for only 1 naya paisa. Meaning very well that he wants a million rupees. And then he asks the divine, give me 1 naya paisa. And what does the divine answer? Wait 1 second. So this is a joke that establishes this the connection between the eternal and the individual. Okay, so that's the 3rd chapter, the eternal and the individual. One should not belittle the individual. And when you speak of the individual, it becomes also the infinitesimal. Okay? Now, is it possible for the individual with form, shape, color, size, weight, for him to become the opposite? The answer is yes, it is possible. Okay? The ego can disappear. The idea of the ego is that which makes you have physical forms. But the individual can become the infinite. But also it is possible for the individual to even efface his individuality and become the infinite. That's the aim of the Buddhists. When you have a cosmic consciousness, you are experiencing the cosmic consciousness. There is an individual consciousness which is experiencing the consciousness. But it is possible for you to become the cosmic consciousness without even the individuality. Okay? That's also possible. So that deals with the eternal and the individual. Then we have got 5 minutes. We can come to the last chapter that we are reading now, the divine and the undivine. Okay? There is many philosophies are there which say that there is a divine and there is an undivine. Okay? There is God and there is spirit and matter, which is the opposite. There are the devas and there are the asuras. There are the Ahriman and Ormuzd in the Parsi religion. Okay, so there is Satan and there is the God. Okay, so there are so many different ideas. Okay. Even in Buddhism also, these are all common ideas. They don't necessarily reflect the spiritual disciplines, but they are common ideas, that there is a difference between the two. So Sri establishes in this chapter that there is nothing undivine. It's the consequence of the Advaita philosophy. The divine is infinite, but he has the power to make him. He is not a slave to his infinity. He has the will and the power to change his infinity into a finiteness. That doesn't mean to say that he is bound by the finite. He is neither bound nor unbound. He is absolutely free, total freedom. So the divine can become the undivine also. There is only a gradation between the two. But when you are in the lower levels of consciousness, yes, it does seem to be undivine. But that's only at the superficial level. At the there are waves on the surface of the sea. But if you go deep down, there are no waves, no movement. It's absolutely a deep calm that operates. So the divine is that, and the physical world is only the limited aspect of things. The vast ocean becomes the waves. So they are both essentially the same. Why should we limit the divine only to infinity? He can also become the finite. So this is what he has said, and we are still reading that, okay, the divine and the undivine. So that which you think is undivine is essentially divine. Does that mean that in the physical world everything is perfect? Srimda makes it very clear, it is not like that. Okay? There is a limitation and there is a purpose. We have to escape from that. We have to accept that there is an undivine element in the physical world because limitations are there. But you are not going to think that they are absolutely eternally undivine. There is an evolution and there is the possibility of your coming out of it. If you could not have come out of it, if you are a slave, he has discussed all these things if you remember, if you are a slave permanently to the imperfect, then there is no possibility of spiritual life. You are stuck and you end up with the either the materialistic formula or you end up with the existentialism, which says that the world is like this, what can you do? You can't do anything about it. You have to just quietly, meekly submit yourself to that and get used to it. You can't do anything to it. What can you do? You can't do anything. So just accept it with good grace. This is the philosophies which are there. But there are spiritual disciplines which say that no, it's not like that. Even the undivine, number one, you can escape. Number two, even that which is undivine, there is an evolution and which is slowly revealing the divine in the apparent undivine. Okay? That's what he says in this chapter, divine and undivine. So, we have covered all the 4 chapters and I have given you the essence of what he's saying in each one. Okay? If there are any questions that arise afterwards, okay, you can ask and we will see whether we can answer them. Because 40 pages of each chapter, we have summarized in 10-15 minutes. So naturally questions can come. But we have given the basic idea of what he's saying. Because we have to discuss it in great detail. Okay, that's the thing. Okay. So, can we end the class here? 8:34. 1 minute is there. Unless you have something to say.
Thank you.
Okay. Did it help? Archana, did
I'll have
it
to leave, Ranga.
help?
Yes, Ranga, that was quite clear and it gave a basis. Now we can read the chapter more.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Au revoir, everybody.
Thank
Archana,
you.
Shilpa, Suki. Au revoir and have a nice day.